Good Monday makers, it's time for another community build roundup, and in this week's episode we're going to be checking out a steel awning, a dust collection boom arm, some machine shop builds, a desk surround, and a simple workbench. All kinds of really great projects in this week's episode, but remember, even if you're not making any of these exact same things, you can incorporate the techniques and clever uses of materials that we're going to talk about in whatever it is that you're making. With that said, let's jump into today's projects. First up, we've got this steel awning from Roger, and I love this because it's a really simple project, but it gets the job done and looks fantastic. So you can see here they've got this small porch area, and they wanted to cover the door and just protect the doorway from rain, and you can see there's some stuff already collecting on top, the leaves and stuff, and so this is just a nice front awning to add to the door, and it's done really simply. They made a rectangle with T-connectors, just the maker pipe T-connectors and 3/4 inch EMT conduit. You can see that frame there, and then they've got a cross support pipe, and then in the middle they used a 180-degree connector to add this front to back brace, and the whole roof panel is supported by this rectangle. And then you can see they use one-hole straps on this piece of conduit on the back to mount it to the ledge or to the roof eave there. And then they secured some of the metal panning, some steel sheeting to the rectangle, and I'd imagine they just used self-tapping screws through the sheet and into the conduit frame. And then you'll notice that they supported the front of the awning and kind of achieved a slope with it by using the adjustable angle maker pipe connector here, and the same thing on the other side, and that goes down and connects to the wall here using the maker pipe adjustable flange, and you can see that there's one of those on each side, and again it creates a slope here to allow water and other things to slide off, which is a really good technique to incorporate, and this is just a fantastic awning example from Roger. Thanks so much for sharing this, I really appreciate it. Next up is a dust collection boom arm, and this comes from How to Do It Better on Instagram. And I love this. We've seen some boom arms in the past. There's been a couple YouTube videos that I'll link down below that have been shared, and this is a great one as well. This one is less than $50, he said, and the way that he achieved that was by using steel cable. So instead of using conduit and connectors for every part of the build, he used steel cable, which is a really good technique, and I think it alleviates some of the problems that you might experience with using a long piece of conduit. Because you'll notice here that there's adjustable angle flanges attached to the wall, and that's what allows it to hinge and move around. And there's T-connectors that mount this vertical piece of conduit here. And then there is a piece of conduit that goes all the way and extends all the way out to the front of the boom arm, as you can see here, and that's a long piece of conduit. And in one of the videos that we saw from Southern Style DIY, he was experiencing some issues with a long span like that needed to support the hoses and different things. And so what How to Do It Better did was, you can see there's a steel cable that runs from the front of the boom arm all the way to the back part of the frame, and you can see that here. They used a puzzle piece clamp and then some of the cable that you can get off the shelf, which we've talked about on the channel in the past, and that just goes around the bolt on the puzzle piece clamp, and then that goes all the way up and attaches to another puzzle piece clamp up here, and that is pulled tight, as you can see, to support the boom arm all the way down to the end, and even raise it up a little bit. And then from there, he just secured the dust collection hose to the framework using shower curtain hooks and looks like paracord to allow it to slide across the boom arm. A lot of cool techniques and just a lot of features packed into this small build, but he said he was able to complete the boom arm for less than $50, which is really cool and a great way to keep your shop organized and save some money in the process and keep you from having to manufacture some large boom arm or something like that. So really cool. Thanks so much for sharing that. Next up is a few builds from Henry Holsters. We did an interview with them a while back, and back then we talked about some builds they were using in their shop, and now they've been posting a lot recently and over the last couple of years really on things they've been making for their machine shop. And here's some of the builds they've done recently. This one, I love this. This is a sign holder. They just used the maker pipe flange attached to the wall, just a piece of conduit coming out. Super simple. The sign is just supported by that piece of conduit. Then they have a chain adding some support as well, and that just extends down and hooks onto the end of the conduit. Super simple build, but cool nonetheless. We also saw that he made a stand that uses gravity to drain chips. As you can see here, he's got a storage bin or like a plastic tote he drilled holes in, and they made this maker pipe frame that is offset a bit, so this plastic tote is tilting, and then coolant and different things are draining out of the bottom, which is really cool. And here you can see that stand built, and then that back pipe is taller than the front, and it's even angled side to side as well, so it sends all the coolant to one corner, which is really awesome and really cool use in their shop. And then we also saw another build they did, and they made an anti-static ionizing air gun. Or no, they were trying out an anti-static ionizing air gun at the dust-off station. So they have this stand they built with maker pipe and conduit, and they've got this funnel here that apparently pulls directly into the dust collection system. So the parts that are leaving the buffing and finish area, they go into the assembly and they don't take any grit along with them, which is really cool. So they just bring in the parts that they're manufacturing here and then use this gun to blow off the dust and different things that collect on the parts. And then there's a dust collection system that sucks everything out here through this funnel, and then they can move on with their assembly process and not take anything along with it. Super cool, and a really awesome use of maker pipe and conduit to make this functional stand. So really cool. All kinds of awesome builds from Henry Holsters. Thanks so much for tagging us and for sharing these builds. We always love seeing them. Next up is a desk surround from Chan, and this is really cool. You can see here that he's got a desk, and it looks like he's got several monitors and wanted to create a system or a surround that supports lights, a microphone, a camera, and all kinds of stuff. So he made this surround that goes around his desk, which is a really good idea. Instead of trying to build a whole new desk or trying to figure out some solution that incorporates all-in-one, if you already have a desk in place, you could build a surround like this. The desk that I'm sitting at right now is actually separate from the surround that goes around it. And that's always a good technique to keep in mind to save you from, trying to build a whole desk and whole apparatus. You can just build a surround. And this is really cool. We can see there's a different variety of uses of T connectors, 45-degree connectors, 90-degree connectors, all used in a really simple and great way. And I think he said that he had some issues with the terminating pipe slipping in the connector, which is something I wanted to highlight because if you are worried about the rotation of a piece of conduit inside the terminating end of the connector, as like here, you can see the T connector that goes from one side to the other, he's got a light mounted to this pipe, and if you add some weight on here, you could potentially have that pipe rotate and spin inside the terminating part of the connector. So there's a few things you can do to combat this. You could use self-tapping screws through the connector and into the conduit. That'll help a ton and keep it from rotating. You can also get some of the friction bands that we have on the website, and you can heat those up around the piece of conduit and use those inside the terminating end of the connector. That helps a lot too. And it also helps if you use a ratchet and a socket with a 5mm hex wrench to really torque down the connectors and get the bolts really tight. I think he said he swapped out the bolts and nuts with a 1/4-20 nut and bolt and then used a wrench and socket for that, which is something you can do. But if you want to utilize the nut pocket feature and the hardware that's included with the connectors, you can just use a ratchet and 5mm hex bit. And speaking of which, I think he said he had issues with the nut spinning inside the pocket as well. So that's not really supposed to happen. If it does, definitely let us know and we'll replace the connector. But if you do experience that, then you will have to use a wrench on the backside to hold it in place while you crank it down. And like I said, of course, you could do that, or you can reach out to us and we'll replace the connector. But yeah, we really appreciate you sharing this build. Really awesome, and a good thing to keep in mind if you're wanting to, like I said, not want to get a whole desk and whole new setup, but build a surround for something you already have in place, and you can save some money and utilize the furniture that you already have. So really cool. Thanks so much for the review. We really appreciate it. Next up is a really simple workbench from Chad, and this is really awesome. And it's just a really simple frame. He said it's a work in progress. He wants to add some more stability to it because, as you can see here, it's kind of a wide table, and it's just 4 90-degree connectors on the bottom, 4 90-degree connectors on the top, just creating a cube, and then a piece of wood on top. Super simple. And I asked him which casters he used because a lot of people were asking about them. And he said he's not entirely sure where he got them. He's pretty sure that he got them off of Amazon a while back and was using them on a different table for a while. but then used them in this workbench and repurposed them and used the threaded pipe inserts from MakerPipe to secure them in place in the end, which is a good thing to keep in mind. You know, we have the casters on our website with a plastic insert, but you could also use the metal threaded pipe inserts with other casters if you find some that have a stud that fit the inserts. So that's something to keep in mind. But he said this is going to be used in a pottery workshop with students. So he wants to add some more bracing and kind of test it some more before he deploys it and lets the student use it, which is a good idea. You don't want it to, you know, wobble and have things fall off, especially pottery and stuff like that. So definitely want to make sure it's super strong. But really cool, Chad. Thanks so much for sharing this. And thanks to everybody for posting your builds. As always, these will all be linked down below if you want to check any of them out in more detail. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.